Hi and welcome to part 3 of the Audacity tutorials. In this video I'm going to show you how to do some minor sound repair in the program. A few things to keep in mind before you do any audio repairs. Audacity is a destructive editor, so any changes will affect the audio file you're using. They can't be removed except for using the undo command, also known as best friend keys Ctrl+Z. Audacity does have an unlimited number of undos, but unlike other editing programs, you can't go back and only remove one step from the chain or cherry pick what you want to remove. You have to go back and undo all the changes in a row to get to the one you no longer want. If you remember back in the first video, I suggested choosing copy all files because that was safer when setting up the project options. That way your original files are safe and the program is editing with the copies you made inside the project folder. If you're not sure how your project was set up, you can go to Edit Preferences, Import Export, and you can see right there I've made Make a copy of uncompressed audio files before editing safer as my option. And click OK. It's a really good idea to save your project as you're working. To do that, go to File, Save Project As. I'm just going to call this Audacity Sound Repair. You can see at the top that the project is automatically saving to the Audacity Workshop folder that I created on the desktop. I'm just going to hit Save. Now you'll see the name of your project in the top left corner of the display. Okay, let's get started. As you've seen, I already have a project folder on my desktop. I'm going to import a few audio files from that folder into my project. Go to File, Import, and Audio. You'll notice it's defaulting to open my workshop folder. I'm going to import the moon landing and press Conference 2 and click Open. For now, I'm just going to mute the moon landing, and we're going to work with the press conference file first. When it comes to audio repair, one of the most common problems is that a sound file has been recorded too low and needs to be boosted. You can always tell the strength of sound in an audio file by looking at the size of the waveform. The size is relative to the overall sound level, so a quieter file will have a smaller waveform. You can also check the audio file's sound level when you play it back. At the top of the screen, you'll see 2 VU meters. If you put your cursor over top, you'll see one as a playback level, and the other is the recording level. The playback level will display the sound levels for the file when you play it back. I'm just going to select a spot within the file and play it.
City, and I will be forever.
As it played, you could see the highest peak in the file hit just under -12, but the majority of the file was hitting between -21 and -18. So the audio file does have a much lower level than I would like. A good level to aim for is around -6 dB when you're recording, but anything between -3 and -12 is great. And if you look, you can actually see the difference between the waveform on the top track and the press conference file. You can see how much larger the waveform is. We have 2 choices on how to boost the file. We can either use Amplify or Normalize in the Effects menu. We're going to start with Amplify. So I'm going to select a section of audio that I want to boost. Just a small section so you can see how it works. You go to the Effects menu and choose Amplify. So I need to choose what I want my new peak amplitude to be within that section, where I want the file to peak. For now, I'm going to put in -5 dB. Now Audacity does the math calculation to figure out what it needs to increase the sound file by in order to have it peak at about -5. Now you can see how the waveform has increased within that small section. So that's the Amplify effect. Now let's try the Normalize effect. First I'm going to do Ctrl+Z to undo the Amplify change that I just did. Now I can use Normalize to just a highlighted section of audio, or if no audio is selected, it'll apply it to all the audio files and all the tracks. Except it won't apply it to any tracks that are muted, like the moon landing track at the top. So I'm going to go to the Effects menu and choose Normalize. You can see that because I didn't have a section of audio selected, it has selected all the audio and all the tracks. But again, because the moon landing track is muted, it won't apply to that track. The default is to normalize to -3 dB, which, as I mentioned, was the highest point kind of within a normal range. I'm going to leave it as that as my example and click OK. Audacity will now increase the file until the peaks or the highest points in the sound file hit -3 dB. You can see the overall increase in the size of the waveform. If you have a sound file where some sections are very low, you can select individual sections of the file and increase them. So I've selected this section that's a bit lower than everything around it, and I'm going to apply an amplify to just that section. Be careful though, you don't want to change the overall tone of the clip. You want it to still sound natural and that it sounds uniform with the rest of your sound file. On the flip side, if you have one section of the file where the peak is much louder than the rest of the file, you can select just that high peak, go to Amplify, and reduce the volume of that section so that it's more in line with the rest of your sound file. Now I'm going to save my project file, and I'm going to save this one as version 2. There are some other useful tools available under the Effects menu. I'm just going to highlight a section at the beginning, and under the Effect menu, I can fade in that section. If I go to the end of the sound file and select the ending, I can go to Effects and choose Fade Out. And it'll apply a fade out to just the highlighted area. The Effects menu has lots of other great tools for you to play around with. What I'm going to show you next is noise reduction. So I'm just going to mute the press conference file and unmute the moon landing. First, let's take a look at removing unwanted background sound. There are 2 steps to doing this. First, you have to have a selection of the sounds you want to get rid of, and this is called a noise profile. This tool is for fixing audio files that have an annoying or distracting sound in the background, not naturally occurring background sound that you want to have as part of your piece. If you're in a parade, you want to be able to hear the parade. If you're in the woods, you want to be able to hear the sounds of nature. So I'm talking about sounds like the buzz of a fan or an overhead light, a hiss or a hum underneath the audio recording, something that's an irritating sound. I'm going to listen to this file now and find the sound I want to remove or repair.
Where were you at 9:32 on the morning of July 16, 1969?
Now when I play this file, you can hear the hissing in the background from the old radio recording. Remember, we don't want to remove the natural background sound. We want to keep that, but in this case, it's just the hiss from the old-fashioned radio recording. Now I need to find a section that is just the sound that I want to remove. So I'm going to use my selection tool and drag to highlight a section of the sound that I want to take out of the sound file. I need to isolate just the hiss I want to remove. You can see from the waveform where the strength of the sound is. So if I'm trying to remove just a background hiss, it's a good idea to look for the really small sections of the waveform. It's usually where the file is the quietest and no one's speaking. That's the best place to try and isolate an annoying hum or background sound. So I'm just going to highlight this section here and play it back. If I don't like it, I can always choose another selection. It's really important that the section that you highlight contains only the sound you want to remove. You have to make sure that there's no other sounds or voices in the background. All right, I'm happy that it contains just the sound that I want to remove. Once you've selected your noise, go to the Effects menu and choose Noise Reduction. Now you'll notice that there's a step 1 and a step 2 to this. Our first step is to get Noise Profile. You're now telling Audacity that the selected area is noise. Click anywhere within the sound file to clear the selected area. Now we're going to apply that noise reduction. Nothing is currently selected, so if I was to apply the noise reduction, it would apply it to the entire sound file. You can also drag and highlight a selected area that you want to apply the effect to, rather than applying it to the entire file. I'm going to drag and select a small area in the file to apply the effect to. That way you can hear the before and after of applying the effect. Now that I have my selection, I'm going to go to the Effect menu and choose Noise Reduction. Now I have some choices here in the settings. How much would I like to reduce this noise by? 12 dB or more? Some of this is going to be trial and error to see what works best for each sound file and each type of sound that you're trying to remove. For now, I'm going to choose Reduce by 20 dB and leave sensitivity at 6. Just keep in mind, the more you slide to the left, the more of the sound you're removing. I'm going to choose Reduce and click OK. Now when we play it back, we'll be able to hear that selection that I removed the hiss from, and you'll be able to compare it to the rest of the sound file.
69.
Astronauts report it feels good.
If you were Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, or Ed Aldrin, you were 363 feet.
You can clearly hear the difference from where the background hiss was removed from the file. You'll notice that the sound file still sounds natural. The effect hasn't created a kind of metallic or tinny sound inside the file. Sometimes you may need to play around with how many decibels you're reducing the file by or the sensitivity level to make sure you're not trying to remove too much from the background of the file. Sometimes it can make it sound kind of hollow or tinny, but this file sounds great. Please keep in mind that noise reduction does not work for every type of sound removal. It works very well on a repeating or monotonous background sound. This is not a great effect for trying to remove other voices from the background. There are lots of other types of effects available in the menu if you'd like to try them out. That's all for this tutorial. There are lots of other great resources online if you want to explore more of the effects available in Audacity.